This is UMass Hockey.
And O'Hara does something marvelous yet again!
Home to future NHL stars. 5 NCAA tournaments in the last 6 seasons. 2 Frozen Fours. And a national title.
Another shot, they score!
It's NewMass at a whole new level. Now to get you pumped for all the Minutemen action on the ice, along with Nathan Strauss, here's the voice of the Minuteman, Burnham.
And welcome into a NewMass Minute, the first for 2025-2026. Welcome into the Burnham Podcast Emporium. I'm the voice of the Minutemen, alongside my broadcast partner, Nathan Strauss, who last we left, I promised we'd do some summer episodes, but you got a full-time job. I was traveling. We didn't get to it, but here we are, ready for the season, man.
We're ready for the season, and what it means is that we're just going to condense everything we were going to do in the summer into kind of like a 2 or 3 week mini marathon before puck drop on the 4th. So we're 3 weeks away. I mean,
crazy.
really, it's right on top of us.
I mean, let's go back. Can we rewind? 'Cause
Please.
We sent you out to Fargo, North Dakota, and UMass won an amazing game against Minnesota in the first round of the NCAA tournament. I think they're still complaining about some of those calls.
yeah, Minnesota fans have not forgotten the trip.
Okay. And then you take on the eventual national champion Western Michigan team in a 2-1 hard-fought battle. What do you remember about that game as we head into this season while looking back a bit?
I want to start with the Minnesota game because we were talking out in Iowa the other day about sort of moments that made us feel. That was for football.
Yeah.
There's no D1 hockey team in Iowa, plenty of junior teams.
Wherever we go, we're talking about
UMass hockey. Yeah, I mean, we were staying in Cedar Rapids, right? But I was thinking about sort of the moments that I felt the most pride as a UMass double alum and sort of a UMass broadcaster, thinking about that game against Minnesota where you've got a team of first and second round and third round draft picks. They were the favorites. They had a ton of fans in the building, and you go down by multiple goals. You come back and win in overtime. Like that, to me, was one of my favorite games I've ever called and sort of been a part of from the stands. It also was after a double overtime game before it, so it got pushed back 2 hours.
It was just a weird day,
It was like
wasn't it?
12:45 in the morning Eastern time when that goal got scored by Suniev. Obviously, the sort of complaints about the call notwithstanding, like it was a lot of fun, and sort of I thought UMass deserved it. And then the Western game was tough. I think it was hard to swallow because it was so even. And then we saw what Western Michigan did in the Frozen Four. And obviously, you know, you've now lost to the national champions 2 years in a row, with Denver 2 years ago, Western last year. But it was just a great, only one team can win the national championship, right? Well, it was a great experience.
And I was just thinking about, I was going back and looking at the box score of that game where UMass didn't allow a 5-on-5 goal against Western Michigan. It was, and I think there was a penalty upgraded from
Suniev took a major.
And that certainly affects things. Not saying the outcome would have been different, but not the way you wanted to end the season, but just another real successful year, 21-14 and 5 on the year. Hockey East was dominant, and hopefully we'll see that again this season as we're 3 weeks away from the opener. Northern Michigan is going to be your opponent on the docket to start. Think about the years past that we've had where right out of the gates, it's Michigan, it's Denver. I mean, Northern Michigan, a team that struggled last couple of the season. So you're going to get an idea, I think, see a lot of different players to begin the season and see what really a whole new roster has in store.
Yeah, and I mean, speaking of a whole new roster, so last year Northern Michigan really struggled because they lost their former head coach, Dave Patulny, to the Grand Rapids Griffins like a month and a half before the season started.
Not ideal.
Not ideal.
Yeah.
Especially not in the current landscape. So they struggled last year, but they're now in year 2 of this coaching staff, and so there's a little bit of cohesion. They have a handful of folks who come in from the CHL, but it is a different looking schedule than it has been the last couple of years. Remember, last year, UMass played like 5 home games before New Year's. And this year, it's really front-loaded, which for a group that's sort of young up front and then older, more experienced in the back, could be beneficial. I remember last year, UMass went out to Arizona. They went to Las Vegas and to Tempe, Arizona. and had a lot of home games in the second half of the year. I think it's a little bit more favorable this year in terms of those home
still
games.
Have teams that went to the tournament last year. Bentley won the league for the first time in their team's existence. That was a tough game to start the season last year. Was that last year?
Yeah, UMass went on the road last year. It was 5-4, and they gave up 2 goals in the final minute.
And so I think we'll talk about the roster construction here for a second. You lost a ton to the NHL, to guys that you had counted on as being character guys that end up graduating. And so, especially up front on the offensive side, as you mentioned, the essentially your top lines. So the way that the staff has kind of created this roster, some transfers, but not too many, and then another, 8 freshmen coming in.
Yeah, and UMass has stuck true to their roots. And, I had a good conversation with the coaching staff a couple of weeks ago and was asking about the CHL rule, which, there was a lawsuit basically that led to the NCAA letting players who had played in the Canadian Hockey League, which is the OHL, the WHL, and the QMJHL, the Quebec Maritime Junior Hockey League, to now be NCAA eligible. A lot of jargon, but, we can explain that over the broadcast, et cetera. But basically, huge change, right? Yeah. Half the hockey ecosystem now has access to the NCAA for the first time.
Just more players available.
More players available, more Canadians available in particular. And the coaching staff said, look, we didn't want any CHL player for this year if it meant disrupting our recruits that we had slated to come in. And there are a number of commits that UMass has from the CHL for following years, for next year and years following. But UMass brought in the players who they wanted to bring in this year. And that includes a first-round pick in Vaslav Nestrasil. It also includes Landon Nyes, who's someone who could go in the first, second round this year. And they didn't change their philosophy.
You're jumping the gun on me.
I'm not trying to jump the gun, but from construction standpoint, right? They didn't change. They stuck to their guns. And why wouldn't they?
All right, let's go with this. Let's talk about the guys that we know. And we're going to do another show in a couple of weeks. Hopefully we'll get some insight from the 2 captains on the squad. Lucas Olverstad is one of those captains who returns, a guy that joined the team last year. Jack Musa is kind of a household name at this point around here. He brings his career 30 goals back to the ice. Let's talk about him for a second and what he might mean to this team. And this is his 3rd year in this system. I mean, he's done such a good job to progress. I mean, what could he be if things fall into place for Musa and UMass this year?
I mean, the answer is he's going to be the guy.
Yeah.
And last year, UMass had 2 top lines that really produced a lot of goals over the course of the year. And Musa, in part because of the season that Cole O'Hara had, almost went underappreciated, radar, right? Yeah. But he is such a skilled player, and he will be signing an NHL deal after this season. He had interest after this last year. He's that caliber of player. He's back for a junior season, and that's the kind of thing that has led to really successful years in years past. Greg Carville, his freshman year, said that he had a little bit of a resemblance to Bobby Trevino, except Bobby was will first and then skill. Jack just has so much skill. And so I really think that he's going to be amongst the Hockey East leaders in points this year, and he's going to have to carry some weight
think of
for
all
UMass.
The firepower that you lost. Suniev being obviously a big name. O'Hara, who was where did he finish? Top of the NCAA in points, or
top 5, top 6 in the NCAA in points last year.
Just like a Hobie guy. So I mean, Musa, you think will be a guy that they lean on, and then also Daniel Jenshko, who missed some time with an injury in the World Juniors last year, but played very well when he was playing for his home country in Slovakia, and then I think at times really showcased what he could do. So I don't know, not going to project lines or whatever, but Jenshko, Musa, those 2 guys are kind of the returning firepower that this team has.
Yeah, and I would also add on, Nick Van Tassel and Cam O'Neill are both drafted players who had moments last year, and Van Tassel in particular, he's 6'5", right? So
beast.
He had games where he was really, really impactful. I think if he can chip in goals, if O'Neill can chip in goals and sort of build that rhythm, that'll be huge. I think they might be the kind of players who make or break UMass's offense in the early part of the year. But also, you're bringing in a first-round drafted forward for the first time in program history. Yeah. Nestrasil, who put up just gaudy numbers in the USHL, someone with a ton of skill and a lot of size, and Chicago picked him in the first round, right?
25th overall, yeah.
25th overall. He's the second highest drafted player in program history behind one Cale Makar. And I think, you never want to rely on a first-year player to carry your offense. but I think he has a real chance to do so. And I know we don't want to. We're going to talk about the first-year players as well, but first-year players and transfers, Matthew Wild as well could have a big role when it comes to.
Comes from RIT. He was a Hobie nominee. I think he missed a little time with injury last year, but still able to put up points.
Yeah, 67 points in 67 games for RIT, including I think over 30 goals in those 2 seasons. So again, UMass lost all of their centers basically.
So when you lose all your centers and that much on the front for a team, in this day and age, the transfer portal is there, and this staff very selective. 3 transfers that they bring in, and Wild is one of them. So I think just speculation, right? I mean, you would expect him, Mikey D'Angelo, the transfer from Michigan State. You would expect those guys to be contributors because you're just handpicking, so few transfers to come in.
Yeah, and again, the UMass coaching staff, by philosophy, has not been huge in the transfer portal, and I think that's by design. There are certain teams in this day and age that have really embraced transfers as a method of team building, Northeastern being one of them. But UMass, and we know this, has success when players stay a second, a third, a fourth year. And it's almost out of necessity that they do go to the portal. And they have had some big hits in the transfer portal as well. But I do think you get 3 different kinds of players. I think, Wild, more of a scoring threat.
Who's your favorite transfer in the transfer era?
Carson Gasevich won UMass the national championship. I would add like Jacob Pritchard.
Plus just a real fun human being to be
real
around.
Fun, Orchard Park, New York. Yeah. His family, big in this athletics
huge
community
Game
up
of
there.
Thrones fan.
Yep. But I would say Jacob Pritchard, who came over from St. Lawrence, would be another one. And there are a lot of other guys. I think Lucas Olvestad came in and remember, he played the entire postseason last year with one arm, basically. Yeah. He's up the ranks as well.
Him and Owen Murray, the 2 captains for UMass. Let's talk about the defense then. Really, I think the storyline heading into last year was 2 freshman defensive, players on the same pairing, essentially, with Del Elche, who had a phenomenal year for Massachusetts, and Larry Keenan. I think both those guys, what you wanted to see them get better across the year. And now you got 2 guys who played essentially every game coming back for year 2 with that kind of cohesion you would hope can really spark things right out of the gates.
Yeah, I would say it was even more than that going into last year, because you had some players who had never played first pair minutes, like Owen Murray, who were in that role, Lyndon Alger as well. And then, your third pair was Kennedy O'Connor and Finn Loftus, who were also sort of growing into those minutes as well. This team is a lot more similar to the successful Greg Carvel teams of the past, with experienced, high talent blue line. So Del Elche was great in the first half of the year, but Keenan really surged in the second half, and he's one of the best. I think that pair could be one of the best in the conference. And you also have the benefit of a first round caliber player in Landon Nyes, who's coming in. You've got Colson Hanrahan. You've got Charlie Lieberman, who missed all of last season and redshirted.
Didn't see him at all,
but he was on the ice in the latter half of last season, but not in a playing capacity. You have, I think, just a lot deeper of a blue line this year. And of course, you've got Murray and Olvestad, 2 seniors, as your top pair.
I'm thinking he had one of those game-tying goals last year, maybe against Sacred Heart or UConn early in the season. He's just so quick and shifty, and he's hard to pin down. He's a guy that can do a lot of different things for you.
He's also a talker. He's probably the most talkative person.
Right?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think we probably will get him back on.
Came from a grain farm. I can't remember.
Oh, Jay, very funny. They
sorry.
They're livestock farmers, I believe, for the genes of the cattle. I mistakenly called the Murray family dairy farmers. Thinking of Lucas Vanderboys, the previous year's family was dairy farmers. I got corrected by Dale and the entire Murray family via text. On air, that they are not dairy farmers, and so that'll always live in my mind. But yeah, he brings that farm mentality, right?
You take feedback and criticism, you absorb it, and then you get it right. We need more people like that in this world.
I just have to be more fast, hard prepared. That's the UMass hockey motto. But but in all seriousness, Murray did tell me last year at Media Day, he was like, "Look, our preseason is hard. Picking stones and being on the farm in the summer is harder. It's harder for him to keep weight on because of how hard he works in the summer
and burning calories."
But you think about the contrast in what he and Lucas Olvestad bring, right? Like Olvestad, Out of Sweden, a little bit quieter, leader very much in terms of his on-ice actions. He's got the championship pedigree. He came in and was an immediate leader in the locker room last year.
Yeah.
But Owen's the vocal guy, right? And you need that if you're a hockey team. You need someone who's going to fire you up. You need a talker. And Owen, like, he could talk to you about anything at any given time, but also on the ice. Like, our hot mics will pick it up sometimes. And for better and for worse, it's a good matchup, I think, the two of them.
What's the, because I asked you about Musa, kind of what he could be. When Delice came in with quite a bit of fanfare as a guy that was going to really excel, and he has. What's the next step for him, and what could he be when all is said and done? Yeah,
I think Delice had a quicker adjustment to the NCAA because of his skating and his skill, and he really sees the open ice quite well. Yeah. He was also drafted, this last season by the Avs in the 3rd round, and I can't think of any other notable Colorado Avalanche defensemen who come from UMass. So, but no, clearly, clearly McFarland and the crew in Colorado see something in him. Yeah. What it is now is the consistency, I think, and he put up a lot of points early on and kind of maybe took folks by surprise. Now it's just, can you do that every single game, and also growing into the defensive side of things as well. And we'll see what the lines look like on day one, whether it's him and Keenan, whether it's him and Murray. But also, remember, UMass played the last 8 games of the year last year with basically 4 defensemen. And they're not going to have to do that this year. Yeah. And that was in part due to injuries and in part due to who was available and sort of the game situation. He did it playing 30 minutes a night. He should be able to do it even better playing 23, 24.
Yeah, I was looking at the ice time for Ovalstad. It was, 23, 24 minutes per night.
And it was over average. 30 in that in the NCAA tournament.
So just like,
with one arm.
Once you get once you get into crunch time, it's like, you're not coming off, man. Yeah. And then they will, I guess there's a lot of familiarity now with Michael Robel in goal, the junior. Comes back to Massachusetts. He had a phenomenal season last year. I think he said something, I couldn't remember the quote during the offseason, but hey, he's like, I think I have more work to do. And obviously UMass will certainly take that. But, he could be we haven't seen we'll talk about the preseason poll. I think UMass came out 6th. Preseason amongst the top, heralded goalies entering the year in Hockey East.
I would say in the country, right? I think it's Trey Augustine at Michigan State, Albin Boya at Maine, and Michael Rabel as the guys right now. As
my foam finger fell down.
Yeah, it agrees with me, I think, or maybe it's a sign saying Rabel's actually better than those two. But right, it's pretty rare to see a player turn down the NHL. And Greg Carville talked to Bell Frazier of the Salt Lake Tribune, I think, this summer about that. Goalies never need to rush. It's really rare if you're a goalie to be starting games in the NHL as a 20-year-old. And so the fact that he comes back for a 3rd year, he was so good the second half of last season, like truly, truly elite. And I think, again, we're going to be seeing another Richter caliber season from him. And, Big Michael, 6'7", he's continued to fill out. He's continued to gain confidence. And he should be one of the best from start to finish.
Quiet kid.
He's cerebral, right?
To him a couple times, but he's like very calculated.
Yeah. The word on the street was, I asked one of the coaches with the Czechia setup.
Streets of Amherst?
Not on the streets of Amherst. One of the Czechia coaches when he came in about what to expect from him. And they said, sometimes he's the smartest one in the room. Like, he might be smarter than all of us. He speaks a number of languages, sees the game well. Also a very good soccer player. I think he would have been a soccer player had he not been a hockey goalie.
Yeah.
Right
up your alley, huh?
Right up my alley, exactly. But I think big things there.
Let's go. Okay, so the first game of the year is October 4th. We'll have football in the afternoon and then hockey at night, 7:30. These times were just announced this week.
Even more than that, Jay. We've got men's soccer against Western Michigan at noon. We've got a triple header that day.
Unreal. So you've got October 4th, October 5th back-to-back, and then I'll just go down the schedule here.
I can do it from memory you want. No, I'm just kidding. I could, but...
Could you?
Yeah.
Stonehill
on Friday the 10th.
October 10th, yep. Okay. And then
at
Northeastern.
Home. Northeastern Bentley split doubleheader at home.
Yeah. And then on to Omaha.
Yeah, and I'll be there.
Which will be,
a lot. It'll be a good test.
Be tough,
first time out there. It'll be my first time in Nebraska. And then after that, you got Cornell at home for 2, which is another really good tournament team.
And you don't have that. The last couple seasons, we've had that kind of tournament taking place on a neutral site. I think some of the accommodations hadn't been great. Some of the situations were a little difficult in terms of travel. So you don't really have that except for that 2-game series in Omaha.
Yeah, and it's a good test, right? But it is different than going to an off-strip casino in Las Vegas, playing on kind of basketball ice against two different teams. You get to play an NCHC team, which will be great for pairwise. And I hate the fact that I'm saying the word pairwise before the season even begins, especially because they changed the pairwise again this year.
Yeah, what's
that has to be a topic for later on in the year, Jay. It's too much for right now, but there'll be an opponent that will play a lot of tough teams. It'll help them out strength of schedule wise. And also, it's a road trip to a difficult barn at Baxter Arena, and it'll be fun, I think. And those trips also serve to bond a team, right? It's different than busing, for example, to Boston to play Northeastern 4 times this year.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's like where you get to know people.
100%. I mean, and like, you know it well. I mean,
as support staff, the same way, right?
Yeah,
like you're
exactly.
there as the radio guy or if you had new people on staff, athletic trainers, whatever, like that helps you kind of get to know the players a little bit.
Yeah, 100%. And it's good for routine setting, and it breaks up the long season. Because again, college hockey, they started practicing the first week of September. They had summer sessions as well. The season doesn't end until ideally the middle of April.
Yeah,
it is really the only full season sport in college athletics for now. So,
what's going to be the next one?
I mean, imagine basketball, right? Basketball or soccer could do a split season. I know they've had proposals about that as well.
All right, so. You can go ahead and take some swings here. The poll comes out for Hockey East. Obviously, a very difficult conference. Came out today as we're recording this. UMass is picked 6th. I think maybe because people look at this is how people pick. By the way, that it's just folks like you and I and whoever else that follow the sport. What do you have returning, and then did I do enough research to figure out who's coming in, right? And sometimes it's hard to kind of line all those up for 11 different teams. So, I don't know, 6th, I mean, hey, like probably should be a little bit higher, but you lost so much. Maybe I understand why people might make that selection. Yeah,
I understand it as well. And I think UMass will have to prove perhaps to some people where they belong. I think BU makes sense at number 1. And I tweeted out my whole ballot earlier today.
You did. So how'd you have? Hold on, let me bring up the release here. Okay, so BU 1, Providence 2, UConn 3, Maine 4, tremendous year last year for them. BC 5, UMass 6, Lowell tied with 7th with Northeastern, Merrimack, New Hampshire, Vermont. Yeah,
and I will say this is a year where there's, I think, going to be more volatility than normal because of the CHL. And I think a lot of teams like UNH and UVM especially, has brought in a ton of CHL players.
Just waiting to spark something.
And it could lead to more upsets, and they could be a better team. Like we really just don't know yet, because it's truly the first time this is happening for all of these teams. I think BU is the clear-cut preseason number 1. I think both the fact that they were a national championship runner-up last year, but they retained most of their star players for an extra year, including the Hudsons and Cole Iserman, and then they brought in a number of first-round draft picks as well.
Have you gone and looked at what the non-conference schedule looks like for some of the other Hockey East teams and how that might affect things pairwise or?
Yeah, I mean,
schedule.
The thing is, we can say that it might affect it right now, but then you never know, because some team last year we thought Omaha was going to be one of the top 20 teams in the country, and we lost to Omaha. UMass lost to Omaha out in Vegas in that opening game, the 3rd game of the year, and Omaha rallied kind of later on in the season and climbed up the ranks, but it's kind of, we're kind of throwing stuff at a wall right now and seeing what sticks. But I will say there are certain schools, BC and BU, that have tricky schedules. Maine tends to have a harder time getting schools to come up there.
Wow, that's your favorite trip.
It is my favorite trip, but tell that to Arizona State and see how easy it is to get from Tempe to Orono.
You want to play hockey, you got to go to Orono, man. Come on.
Yeah, but it should be, again, I think this is going to be a more even year in Hockey East in the last couple of years, in part because BC, the last 3 years, has had Cutter Gauthier, and then Cutter Gauthier and John Leonard, and then John Leonard, basically. And excuse me,
Ryan
Leonard. My mind's on UMass, baby. Yeah, sorry. The last couple of years, right? BC has had Cutter Gauthier. They've had Ryan Leonard. They've had all of these star players, and also Jacob Fowler, who is the country's, in my opinion, Stiga's still there.
Yeah.
But they lost both, one of the nation's best goalies who signed with Montreal. And then they lost their Hobie Baker caliber player in first Gauthier after 2 years, and then Leonard after 2 years. So they have dropped off a little bit. And unlike BU, they have not brought in the kind of CHL talent that sort of garners those eyes. I think.
How did your rankings differ from the ones that actually came out?
It was fairly consistent. I think I agreed with 1 through 6 in terms of the teams, but I had UConn a little bit lower. I had, Providence, and again, I mean, it's marginal at this point in the season. I'll pull it up right now.
You memorized the UMass hockey schedule and dates and times, but you didn't memorize.
Yeah, because one of them is going to for the record, one of them is going to dictate my life for the next 6 months, and the other one is just a tweet. But I had BU, Maine, Providence, UMass, BC, UConn, Northeastern, Merrimack, UNH, UMass Lowell, UVM. So. Okay. Basically, the top 6 is pretty interchangeable. Maine as well is a question mark because they lost Taylor McCarr, they lost Lyndon Breen, they lost a number of their leading scorers, but also they have a tough place to play. They've got a system, right? So Maine, Providence, and UMass are the 3 teams that I think are system supplanted by skill or supplemented by skill, whereas BU and BC and TBD on UConn, I think, but really BU and BC are kind of, we've got the talent. Can they put it together system-wise on the ice?
And kind of going back to last year, we saw a UConn team for the first time, really
in their program history,
make it right and actually be a threat. And Maine, who everyone was saying, sleeping giant, right? They've had so much success in the past, but not recent history, of course. That system that you talked about, there's connections here, very much so to Massachusetts. So those 2 teams those brands resurging in Hockey East.
Yeah, and UConn is an interesting one, right? Because their goalie who started late on in the year, Callum Tung, after his freshman season, signed his NHL deal. He was undrafted, and it's, I don't want to say unheard of, but it's really rare for an undrafted freshman goalie to sign. And obviously they return a lot of the players who made last year happen offensively. They return their best defenseman, Kai Janviria. They also had a couple of 5th years who made a big impact last year as well. It's can they replicate that? And that's the trickier side of things. And obviously they had a really disappointing game in the NCAA tournament where they came so close. Maine, meanwhile, just totally ran out of gas in the NCAA tournament against a high-powered Penn State team that I think is going to be garnering a lot of national eyes this year with Gavin McKenna. So,
what's the paycheck on that?
Allegedly $650,000.
Right.
I don't believe that to be completely accurate because if you think about it, Penn State has $20 million to spend on all of their sports, allegedly, and we know sort of where priorities lie there. But it's possible they did things in a different way. Terry Pagula is a big donor there.
It's possible they just still have that
100%
money, right? So
but McKenna,
but wherever they go, people are going to be paying attention.
McKenna is the presumptive number 1 overall draft pick.
Yeah.
The number 2 presumptive overall draft pick, Keaton Verhoff, is going to UND, North Dakota this year. They're another team that, with a new coach, is going to be, I think, getting a lot of national attention. They're kind of I don't want to say sleeping giant. I would say unfortunately napping giant, maybe. They've really struggled to get it done since their former head coach won a national championship in his first year. But they get a lot of big name players. Your normal likes of the Michigan States, they have a lot of big name players, although Michigan State lost Ike Howard late into the cycle last year. So it's going to be another good year for college hockey, man. I don't know what to say. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's always fun.
All right.
This year there'll be more wrinkles.
Let me rein you in. My job, rein Nathan in. When you look at, last year for UMass, was there something that you said, hey, this is missing? And is that something that you head into the season going, hey, we're going to be better here because why?
Ooh, that's a good question because I think the thing that was missing for much of last year got figured out after New Year's. I think UMass was looking for some centers to step up a little bit. And then Lucas Mercury, basically starting with the game against Northeastern, which was January 10th last year, turned it on and became one of the top centers in the league. And he was so impactful in what UMass did. That also coincided with Kenny Connors, who hadn't scored a goal, I think, until the second half of last season, going on that run where he scored something like 6 or 7 straight games, and he turned it on. And I think the question going into this year, is similar. Like, which of the centers is going to step up and be that force? Could it be the first year Elias Zimmerman, who's 6'6" and really skilled from Sweden? Will it be those transfers, the Mellenbachers, the Wilds, the D'Angelos? D'Angelo's a player I'm really excited about as well.
Michigan State, yep.
Yeah, who will be that presence up the middle? Because again, I think you look at who you return, and it's a lot of wingers. Van Tassel could play in the center. Jack Musick was 70% on faceoffs last year, but he's not a center per se. So that's where I'm looking to determine kind of these early season games against bigger, more physical, but maybe slightly underskilled teams, the Northern Michigans, the Bentleys of the world. And I think not a slight on them, but I think that's how their teams are built by design. We saw Bentley almost beat Boston College last year in the opening round of the NCAA tournament. Like, those are tough matchups a lot of the time. And so who up the middle will be winning faceoffs and being physical and providing the points? That's what I'm looking at right now.
Yeah, when you say those things now, I think Lucas Mercury, right?
Right.
Big, physical, winning faceoffs, and those are like names that we've known for a couple of years.
Also, Jack Galanik is another guy we haven't mentioned yet. He was a multi-year producer in the USHL and someone who I think was very exciting. He's very fast but skilled, and I would imagine that we see a good dose of him. And I can't wait to see those first line charts.
Yeah, I know, and also it's like, because this happens every year, right? Like, one guy is not on there, or something happens, there's an injury or whatever, and then a month into the season, it's like, hey, where was this guy? And so, especially when they're freshmen, right? Like, there's nutrition, there's size, there's conditioning, like all those things that you have to figure out how to live up to the standard of the program. And just because you're not there to begin with doesn't mean that you won't be there a month or 2 months into the season.
Yeah, and there's UMass brought in some players who are talented, but it's also a deeper roster, which I think is a positive thing. Remember, UMass last year was down 2 players for the entire season.
One before the start of the
year.
2 really,
more or less.
Lieberman,
Right. So it's I think going to be a bigger group this year, and also just again like James Dewar last year.
Bo Cosman.
Bo Cosman had a really good couple of games late on, and he was physical, and he'll be impactful. Like, this is just a deeper team. Then you've got sort of the wild cards, right? Like the Lucas Kleschka addition late on, another sort of Daniel Jenchko type player, international with sort of that kind of pedigree. Like, there are some unknowns because of how young the team is up front, but the best way to get those unknowns to knowns is to play the first month of the year mostly at home and see what you got.
Can't wait, man.
Yeah, excited.
Yeah, so that first weekend, November 4th, at the Mullins Center. Keep an eye out for all the promotions and whatnot that are going to be coming out. They're going to do a great job. I mean, it's for bang for your buck in the Valley. It's like the best entertainment possible.
Look, October 4th. If you aren't hyped, if you aren't at Fort Rudd at noon to watch UMass versus Western Michigan,
that's right,
and then McGurk for UMass versus Western Michigan, and then the different directional Michigan that plays at the Mullins Center at 7:30. I mean, what are you doing, man?
You thought we couldn't find a directional Michigan that wasn't in the MAC?
You were
Northern
wrong,
Michigan.
right? Right. I mean, is there a Southern Michigan somewhere as well?
We're going to
find out because Illinois has all 4 cardinal directions as schools. Michigan's got to step it up.
We need more from the great state of Michigan. Okay. I think that'll do it for now. We've got I've got a schedule online for when these shows will be released up until the new year, and then we'll set a schedule for the second half of the season, and we'll come back on October 1st and talk to some of the players, 2 of the captains, hopefully, and just get a vibe of where they're at as we head into that first game on October 4th.
Can't wait. Get the pregame mix pumping.
All right.
You want to run stairs with me before Puck Truck this year?
Absolutely not. All right. He is Nathan Strauss. No one knows more about UMass hockey than him. I'm Jay Burnham. Until next time, from the Mullins Center, saying so long, everybody.